Be able to see me now, right?
Yep, now I can.
How are you, Sophie?
Good, how are you?
I'm great.
Okay, let me just move. Hello everyone, I'm Sophia Haber-Brock, and today I'm joined by comedian and owner of the Stress Factory Comedy Clubs, Vinnie Brand. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
So, I know you've been in the comedy world for many years and you've had some really cool experiences and met some really cool people. So, how did you get started as a comedian?
Well, as a comedian and a club owner, I started in 19, I'm going to get this right, 89. So you were not even born. Um, and about 89, 90, somewhere in there. And what happened was I was at that time in my life, I was in a construction company. I owned a flower shop. And that was the end of what was commonly referred to as the first comedy boom. And that comedy boom um, led there to being a club in Eatontown, New Jersey called Rascal. So, you would watch comedy on television and you would think right away, well, I can do what these guys are doing. And so, I decided to get down to do an open mic. And that's what I did. I did an open mic at Rascals. Uh, you find out quickly that not as easy as it looks, uh, but you get hooked. If it's in your blood, you get hooked right away. And so I got hooked pretty quickly.
And it seems like comedy comes pretty naturally to you. Did your comedy evolve from when you started to now? Like how
Oh
has your
goodness,
comedy evolved?
goodness. Okay. So my very first day on stage, I didn't prepare at all, and I did very, very well. And so I thought, well, I'll be a star overnight. So I prepared all week long because open mic was every week, and you only get up one night every week. So that week in between, I prepared a bunch of material, and I thought it was brilliant. And my second time on stage was so bad that they turned the lights and sound off at the same time. Uh, I was having such a hard set that in my head I thought, well, thank goodness there was a power failure. And then I saw the owner in the back going, get off stage. And so I knew it was not a power failure. So now that's a circuitous answer to your question. Um, yes, it's evolved tremendously because after that second night, um, and third and 100th and 500th night on stage, you start to understand what is funny in a small setting, amongst your friends, and what's funny amongst strangers. And so, yeah, you evolve. And I mean, I think virtually every comic does. I can tell you that I watch my early sets with a very high degree of fun humiliation because it's, you can't believe how bad you were. Uh, but yeah, it's evolved and it's changed. And I went from a stage where I was political for a while, and I went to a stage where I was a little edgier. And now I don't feel the need to be anything. I'm just literally in the moment. So if I'm having a great day and I'm a happy guy on stage. And if I'm having a day that makes me less happy, well, I'm less happy on stage. And I know how to make both those moments funny.
So now when you go on stage, do you usually have a script or you can do it naturally now?
A lot of guys use a script. It's A to Z. Nothing changes. I think what happened to me is that very first time that I wrote stuff. Remember, the first week I went extemporaneously, and I would love to have that set on tape, but the set did well. The second time I prepared, it was written down, and I bombed. And I think I learned very early on that for me, a script doesn't work. So, a written verbatim script, absolutely never. Um, Sometimes if I'm doing something thematically, I'll know that I'm going to do these pieces in this order. And that's as close as I come to a script. And I'll say, okay, here it is. And I like to really be on the stage in that moment. So if something happens, um, it might only happen once. And so I like to let that happen. So no script. Sometimes a very clear idea. I'm going to do these stories in this order, but that's as close as I get.
So now, I know you have the Vicky and Vinnie show that you host. How does hosting add to that? So I know you're still a comedian, but is there something else you do to like be a host?
Yeah, this came about because of the pandemic. And my wife and I have been partners forever. She's never been on stage a couple times, through the years to do a raffle or something. And when the pandemic hit, we had to recalculate our business and figure out how to survive it. And we're still doing that. But when there was no one allowed in, we both said, people are locked down. You remember, it was a lockdown. So we said, let's go do something fun and give people something to watch. And that evolved into this show where, yeah, I'm learning how to be a host, and she's terrific. It cracks me up because I'm doing it now 32 years or 31 years, whatever it's been. And she's doing it 7 months, and she's arguably better than I am.
That's funny. Yeah, I've seen the show twice, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you very much. That means a lot to us because you're what? You're 17?
16.
16. So to be able to reach across a generation, I'm a little bit older than you. I might be older than your father. How old's your father?
He's 66.
Okay, so he's older than I am. But to be able to entertain your father and you at the same moment, that's telling us we're doing something right. And that's exciting, and thank you.
Yeah, of course. So what was your experience starting the Stress Factory?
Well, now that's a little bit longer, but I'll truncate it for you as much as I can. I fell in love with doing comedy right away, and I already have 3 children, and so I wanted to do open mics more often because you can't get good at anything doing it once a week. You have to really be dedicated and follow through. Are you an athlete?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so, but whatever your interest is, whether it's music or interviews or athletics or whatever it is, in order to get good at it, you need to do it often. So I wanted to do open mic more often, and I found a bar in New Brunswick. I lived in New Brunswick at the time, and I lived in North Brunswick, and I found this bar in New Brunswick, and I said, I'll go ask this guy if on Sunday nights I could do open mic, and he let me. And the bar was a dance club. I went in. I had a bunch of open mic friends from Rascals, and they all came up and did it with me. It was a $5 cover charge, and I would just cut the money up. And if we brought in $200, everyone got 40 or whatever the case may be that night, and we split it up evenly. And Rascals got wind of that, and they blackballed me from their club, and they called other clubs, and they blackballed me. And so now this thing that I really love, I can't do. And I called up, and they said, well, you're trying to be an owner. And I said, I'm not trying to be an owner. I want to get better at stand-up. And they wouldn't hear it. So an opportunity came up about a year later to open a full-time room. And I was having trouble getting stage time. There was a guy named Casey Martin. That's his entertainment name. He was booking me. He didn't subscribe to the band. And so I had gotten good for that time, good at that moment, not good comparatively to today. But anyway, he had this room in Edison that went out of business. And I went in and took that room over and opened up Stress Factory after his club had failed. So that's how I started it. And I did it because I had been unable to get on stages regularly. All the New York clubs that blackballed me and the clubs in New Jersey blackballed me with that. So I fell into it because I wanted to do it. And my desire to be on stage led me to a spot where I wasn't allowed to be on stage. So it was a, kind of a, well, I'll show you moment. And that's, ironically, the clubs that blackballed me, well, Rascal was out of business completely through no fault of the owners, who I eventually made up with. And the other club, Catch a Rising Star in Princeton, probably doesn't come back after the pandemic. They were dying anyway. But, all the ownership has changed over the years, all different players. I'm the only one still standing from that group of people. Now, the current location of the club, I started in the Clarion, moved to the Hyatt, and I was leaving the Hyatt. The Hyatt and I got into a legal fight. And so I was going to leave the Hyatt and move to New East Brunswick. And a guy named Tom Bogdan, who was a zoning officer for New Brunswick, came to me and said, I want you to look at this space and keep your club in New Brunswick. So he meets me and he brings me to this entrance I had never seen. It was the back entrance to the same room that I did open mic in that got me blackballed. That club had gone out of business. I forgot all about that club. And I right away said, I'm going to rent it. And I rented it and renovated it. And that's where the club is today.
Oh, wow.
It's a fun, karmatic type story.
Yeah, it's very full circle.
I'm fine.
The place that got you kicked out ends up being the place where you find your most success.
Well, the place that kicked me out was because I started this open mic in this room.
Oh, yeah.
That went out of business. And then when that room, I went back. So the place that kicked me out, they're gone. But the space that I used that got me kicked out is where the club is today. It's fun, very fun.
At the beginning, when you were first starting, the business, what was your first, big break? When did it start to find success?
Well, the club, at that time in my life, I had a flower shop, a construction company, and the club. And the club did well. I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but it was middling. It was doing okay. And the first big name comics I had were big name comics. I mean, you'll know some of them. Gilbert Gottfried and Ray Romano and Kevin James. And they were big names, but at that point they were not. Now, subsequent to starting, I went through a really difficult divorce. And when I moved the club into the New Brunswick location, the club was struggling because I'd sold the flower shop, sold the construction company, declared bankruptcy, got a divorce. I was living in a boarding house in East Brunswick, and I'm going to build this permanent club. It was an insane, ridiculous thing to try to do. And so what happened is we got open, and it was a 22-hour-a-day struggle. And in February of 1995, a girl came in for a job, and I hired that girl, a little younger than me. And I don't know, something about the girl was special. And so I started quasi-courting her. And that girl became a manager of the club and then a partner at the club. And that all happened very quickly. And that's my wife. I ended up marrying her. And that's really the big break of the club, because while I had um, some good comics in, I didn't have someone that would work as hard as was necessary to make it a success. At that time, the club had no kitchen. Um, I was in debt. Living in a boarding house. I had no car, no phone. So when Vicky came on board, that was the moment that I knew that I would work harder and harder. I had someone that would work as hard as I did, and we ended up getting married and having 3 kids, and now we're doing the Vicky and Vinnie show. So that was really the first big break.
That's really nice. It's a cute little story.
Thank you. It's a really, when I hear the story, I say to myself, that's, I don't know, it's just a romantic, fun success story. And when COVID hit, we sat in our basement, and I knew I'm looking at someone, and you're nervous. And I said, Vicky, we've been poor before. We can do this. And so far, we're still doing it.
So, what were some of the most famous comedians that you've had on the show?
It's a story. I have to question it all the time. So it's a tough answer because there are so many categories, right? Ray Romano, Jerry Seinfeld, Kevin James, Kevin Hart, Chris Rock, Amazing Jonathan, Henny Youngman, Robert Klein, Brian Regan, Jim Breuer, Norm Macdonald, Dennis Leary. Man, I'm missing a bunch. Wanda Sykes. So, the biggest, probably the most famous of all would have been Jerry Seinfeld. Ray Romano, Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, they're both, Kevin James, Kevin Hart, Chris Rock, Damon Wayans, Keenan Ivory Wayans, Damon Wayans Jr., Sean Wayans, Marlon Wayans. I mean, these guys have major, D.L. Hughley, George Lopez. Forgive me because I'm forgetting so many.
Yeah, but, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, it's a long list.
So how do you get those comedians on the show?
So 2 ways. When they're first starting out, they're out there working, and they're trying to get better, and they're trying to get their name known. And Joe Rogan, Bert Kreischer, Joe Rogan, Tim Dillon. So anyway, guys are trying to get known, and so they would come through, or they got a little bit of a name and they come through to make money. And now I get them either through a personal friendship, or maybe they're getting ready for a special. If a big guy like Chris Rock comes in, I would never ask him as a favor to come do the room. He would say to me, I need to do the room to get ready to shoot an HBO special. And then he would come in. Sebastian Maniscalco, go ahead. So that's how now it's, Whitney Cummings and over the summer, Chelsea Handler. Chelsea needed to get ready to do a show. So she came in, she did 18 or 16 shows with us in order to get ready to tape. So there's 2 ways to do it. One is they're on the way up and they want to make money, Bill Burr, or they're going to get ready for something.
Do you have any specific stories of comics that were most memorable?
Wow. Some really heartbreaking stories that are memorable. My friend Greg Giraldo, who my wife and I loved, and a brilliant stand-up comic, was a little bit of trouble in his life. The weekend he was with us, had terrific, just amazing shows Thursday, Friday, and then on Saturday, what do you have, anybody? Oh, thank you. Oh my goodness, thank you, sweetheart. Oh, I love that. Oh, thank you, baby. So on Saturday, he overdosed in the hotel room and couldn't do the Saturday shows and ended up passing away the following Thursday. So my last conversation with him was a Saturday morning, and it was a terrifically beautiful conversation, full of regret and sadness and friendship, and then he passed away. So that's probably that's one type of memory. And then a much better memory is a young Ray Romano running into the office in between shows because he's on the phone typing out and finishing the pilot for Everybody Loves Raymond. And when he's leaving that weekend, and I said, Ray, the next time you're here, it'll be for points. And that's a showbiz means he'll get the door. And he said, oh, from your lips to God's ears. And obviously God was listening. So Ray, so that's a different type of story. Brian Regan, a story I told for the first time this year, in 2004, on Memorial Day weekend, on a Thursday night, did a show. It was my mother's first show back at the club working after her second or third bout with leukemia. And I had gone into her hospital room in February and said, hey, I need you here in May for Brian Regan. And she said, I'll be there. And the doctors pulled me aside and said, your mother can never work again. And she told them that she would. And they argued with her, and she got out of the hospital on the Wednesday, and the first show was Thursday. And they said, there's absolutely no way you can work. And she said, I'm going to work. And Brian, that Thursday night, his first set was a booming, unbelievable standing ovation. And he walked back up on stage and did an encore that was an hour long and got a second booming standing ovation. And it was my mother's first day back, and it was her last weekend working with us. And it's a really, again, that's a sweet but somewhat sad story. Those stories are, Patrice O'Neill never wanted to work New Year's Eve, came in and worked New Year's Eve, complaining the whole time before the show, this could be terrible. And the show was great. And he hangs out till 5 a.m, and gives me a big hug and says, that's the best New Year's Eve I've ever had. And that's a great, memory. Jerry Red Wilson telling me that he was going to get engaged in the Tonight Show. And he did it 2 weeks later on the Tonight Show. Jim Breuer working out and selling out what is probably 200 shows by this point, and working out and watching him create. Chris Rock writing an HBO special for 18 shows in a row. So there's a lot of great memories over a long time.
Do you have any advice for students or younger people that want to get into the comedy industry?
Well, first, let me ask you a question. Do you want to be in the industry, or do you want to be an interviewer?
Not really in the comedy industry, but yeah, I do like films, and I do interviews, and I host the news at my school, so I don't know, maybe something like that. I don't really know for sure yet.
That's terrific. Come someday, and we'll shoot a sketch with you, and you can be part of it. I mean, what I tell young people is be open, be honest, be kindly aware. And what I mean by that is, I think everything is funny if it's absent malice. So if something is absent malice, for the most part, it can be funny. And if you're smart enough or gifted enough to take a taboo subject and shine a light on it and make it funny, well, that's great. But try to remember that your words have impact and you can hurt somebody. So don't be over woke. Don't be afraid to joke, but be mindful and make sure that the joke is strong enough. And for my taste, absent malice. There are tons of comedians that work today, in particular, with math, and they can achieve a degree of success. And some of them are mean spirited. But maybe my advice is have a bigger audience. I mean, I get away with a lot of things on stage because when I'm picking on you, it's because I like you, I admire you, you're in my club. So if I pick on somebody or something or some group or it's never with the intent to hurt them. And I think that that's pretty identifiable. So, and then of course I would tell you that comedy is a research project. It's a nonstop research project. You're mining the world, you're mining your own mind, you're mining social environments, political environments, you're mining the human condition. You've got to really, I think you should be a reader. You should devour and read voraciously and expose yourself and to different types of literature and shows. And you have to know the Tiger King, and you have to know what it is. It's because when you make that Tiger King joke in the audience, right? So, you have to really know that this is not a game for lazy or the illiterate. This is a game for well-read. Entertainment in general. Interviewing somebody. You've got to know what question is going to make somebody go, hey, I want to listen to that. So maybe some young comic will hear me and say, well, that old man doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'll laugh at him or her. But, read, watch, be awake, not woke, but awake. Be willing to be the butt of a joke. Have a thick skin because someone's going to tell you you're not good. Entertainment is a lucrative and fun but hard way to make a living. But enjoy it.
The last show that I saw, you were talking that you did travel soccer. You coached travel soccer. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, my daughters play soccer. And when my 20-year-old was little, she was 5 or 6 years old, and she's on a team, and the coach is just, I don't know, very nice guy. I'm still friends with him. But he wasn't a soccer coach. One ball, 15 kids were, every kid touching the ball 3 times. You didn't play soccer, right? Did you play soccer? Okay.
No, I didn't.
So, if there's only one ball, how good can you get? You got to have a ball on your foot. But I really didn't know that at the time myself. I just knew I didn't like, it was one practice a week. It was just, so I complained all season long to my wife. This guy's no good. So the next season comes up, and I'm getting ready to go do shows in New York City. I have to go in the city and do sets. And she goes, oh, I forgot, you can't go to New York tonight. You have a soccer coaches meeting. And I said, why would I have a coaches meeting? And she said, you complained so much, I signed you up. And I became a soccer coach the hard way. And I started hanging out with really good coaches and trainers, and the team got better and better, and we morphed into a travel team and then a academy team. And so we ended up coaching my 2 daughters until they stopped playing the game. Both became runners, very successful runners. And now my little 8-year-old is playing soccer. So I get to do it all over again. It's just, I love it. I love coaching and teaching, and I love guiding young kids into an area of some level of intensity, right? Now, I'm not just saying this because you're interviewing me. Is this for a class or just something you just do?
Well, so I host the news for my school, so a lot of times I'll do interviews with different types of people. And I also really enjoy doing it, and I'm actually trying to make my own, I'm in the process of making my own like show interview.
It's great.
Yeah.
Tremendous. But the reason I ask you that is because there was a determined approach that you had, that you tracked me down. And when I missed the appointment, you were, okay, well, how about now? How about now? How about now? And that's a lot of times that's what's missing in this generation, that stick-to-itiveness. And in coaching, you can teach that. And you've learned it somewhere, whatever, whether your father, your mother, maybe a great educator, but it's an important thing. So that's coaching for me, is the game, but then teaching people what it takes and what work is and how enjoyable it is.
Well, the reason I asked is because, like, it seems like you've done a lot of different things in your life, so just how do they all kind of help you with your comedy? Do they help you with your comedy, or they're two different things?
Everything helps with comedy. And with being an interviewer, you're going to be an interviewer, and you're 16 years old, you're conducting a very good interview, you're going to be successful. You're going to be good at this. You're going to be very, very good at it. Now, in order to be good at it, you need a big life so that you can become intuitive to what's interesting to other people. So as your life expands and you do these things, go to college, you read, you go to comedy shows, whatever you do, you're learning all the time how to be an interviewer. And in comedy, when this interview is teaching me. Now, I'm older than you, but I'm open to learning from anybody because I want to be a well-learned individual. So the minute I think I can't learn from you, I've shut off a source. And coaching is a source for everything. It makes me a better father. It makes me a better comedian. It makes me a better, husband. You become a better when you expose yourself to more. So coaching is one of the most generous, selfish things I've ever done.
Also in the show, you were talking about Jim Breuer, and you said something about like a shooting range, that you and your wife went to the shooting range with him. So are you friends with him outside of like doing comedy together?
Yeah, Jim and I are friends, and we don't get to do enough together because we're both very, very busy. But when I'm with Jim, I'm with he's like a brother. We are very, very like-minded. We're both tremendous family people. We love our families. And, Jim is he's a lot of fun to be around. And he's an intense guy. We went shooting, and he really loves that. His wife loves it. My wife likes it, but not as much. He's a good friend. He'll be doing some video and online work with us as well.
And I see that I saw on the website that he's going to be doing a show soon.
Yeah, he's coming in on Tuesday night. And if you want, I will certainly ask him if you can interview him. I don't know what his schedule is like.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to come up Tuesday and meet him, you bring your father up, come up to the show. I'll give you 2 tickets. I'll introduce you to him. He's a really nice man. So if you have the interest that maybe you want to talk to him, you let me know.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you.
So thank you very much for having me on. If you have any other questions, call me. If you want to come Tuesday, you have my number, text me. Bring your father up. Your father will love Jim Breuer. He's tremendous. And Jim would probably do an interview. He's a very, very nice man. Thank you very much.